Now on this channel, we usually talk about a lot of positive things with Arsenal, especially when things are going well like they are right now. However, it's also good to look at why things ain't working for some players and how they can improve and make the team even better given the situations that we are in. Now, Gabriel Jesus is a player that is definitely in that situation. So in this video, we're going to go through why things haven't been clicking for him this season and if and how he could potentially improve to force his way back into the team. So let's get into it. Now, as this is a negative video, I'm going to be very sensitive of what I talk about. I think it is very good to look at what is going wrong for Gabriel Jesus because I think we can all agree it's not going brilliantly right now. I will give him the benefit of the doubt in some situations, but also discuss where he has to get better in order to get a good space in the team. Overall, I have nothing against Gabriel Jesus as a player, and of course I want him to succeed. And although I've gone to state I don't think he deserves a start at the moment, which I completely agree with, I do hope and think that he can provide quality later down this season. We just need to give him a bit of time. Now, first of all, I will say Gabriel Jesus hasn't played a lot this season. He's only played 243 minutes in all competitions, and he's only started 3 games, being against Bolton, Southampton and Atalanta. And in fact, in all of them, you could probably say he didn't have the best game that he's had before. Now, given this limited amount of game time, I will give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt. We've heard Eddie say it before in the Amazon documentary, but it is hard for a player to come into a side who have been playing with each other for a while now and try and get up to speed even in smaller games such as Bolton and Southampton. Now, what I will say is that he definitely has a much harder role, I think, coming into the side without Odegaard. We've seen Trossard operate as that false 9 with Havertz, and they've played really well off each other, obviously one going forward playing off headers and one going deeper. But Jesus is more a traditional forward, and he will come deeper to provide and find the ball, but he mostly wants to be in their attacking areas and actually getting in the box. But a solution to this problem is to play Jesus more, which I don't think he deserves. He got given the Southampton start, which you could say was quite fortunate. I don't think he even really deserved that over Trossard, and he didn't really play that well in that game, including Bolton as well, where people like Sterling, even Wanyeri and Lewis Skelly were much better than Jesus, who missed some key chances and was not as efficient in front of goal that you want him to be. Now, I don't think Gabriel Jesus is personally the best player to go against low blocks. He can provide brilliant cover from deep and have great dribbling ability in the past, but he isn't really showing that right now. And against Southampton, he really struggled to get any touches within the box, and a lot of them are from deeper where you can't really expect him to do much with it. And a lot of the time he can be seen as that dummy right in the middle, which I do think will give him the benefit of doubt of, with sometimes he's not going to have the best output. Another thing that was clear in this Southampton game was that he would pick up some good areas in the box, but he's not the tallest. He does use his body quite well, but he isn't exactly going to be really physical against top defenders, so he'll pull himself outside of the box to try and create build-up play there. But sometimes Arsenal would put the ball in at the same time and he would just not be there because he's waiting for that pullback, and it just seemed like sometimes his timings were off, which you expect to get better the more he plays with the team. And sometimes I just don't think he's up to speed with the rest of the players around him, especially someone like Havertz, who is pretty much nailed on his movement within the channel down the right hand side and within the box and heading it from deep. Jesus is trying to find his role around that and trying to work with Havertz not making the same runs, which I think a lot of the time we kind of fell in a situation where he wanted to. But I do think this leads into the fundamental problem that is going through Jesus right now, and that is his timings when he's on the ball more specifically. Now, he has been a player that is always very dribble heavy. He is someone that isn't exactly very prolific and quick at making decisions, but even before he has made some great decisions on the break specifically. Now, since he came into Arsenal, and Arsenal have managed him quite well, bringing him off the bench in order to give him the best situation into getting in their great areas late on, and I do not like some of the decisions that he has made. Now, here is one for specifics. Against Leicester, we are 3-2 up in the last minute. Of course, we've probably won the game at this point, but there's a few minutes left and we need to see it out. He goes through and runs through brilliantly here, but he just doesn't pass it. There is options for Trossard and Havertz where he doesn't look up and actually think about passing it. And in the end, he forces it, gets a decent enough save, I guess, from the goalkeeper, and we end up scoring from the rebound. But you've just got to make better decisions than that in general. There's another one where again PSG, where he gets inside the box, and instead of actually just doing the easy pass off to Saka inside the box or Rice who's running in, he tries to turn and dribble his way backwards past the player and gets tackled, and we ended up getting a bounce and ends up going to Martinelli, which again was fortunate. And while these are quite key moments where with Sim, because Arsenal still ended up having a good chance, so there's also little moments. In the Southampton game, he was doing this so much, his timings were completely off of the rest of the team. He was coming in deeper to help when Arsenal pressed really well and won the ball back, and they'd give the ball into him and then he just wouldn't pass it to Havertz running through or Saka for a while. well. This really ruined the timings and allowed Southampton to get back to be able to make the tackles and the blocks, while Jesus hasn't helped us. And I think this is the real problem with him. He's always had these timings down when he joined, specifically that great 2022 before he got that knee injury. And he was so good at picking people out and knowing when to do these brilliant passes, which made him a very vital part to the build-up and the end product of the team. And the problem is, if he can't build up from deep, he can't get these timings right, and he can't really work in this system, then he's not going to provide much goal scoring threat, because he has always performed under his XG. He is just a poor finisher traditionally. Looking at his stats in the whole time he's been at the Premier League, there's only really been 2 seasons where he got around his XG. Some years he's even scored around a 0.6 goals per game, which is very high, but his XG is around 0.8 or 0.97. So he's still underperforming in that metric, and that's never going to improve. He's always going to have that bad of a metric. And even this year he's got a 0.54, which is actually a relatively good one, but he hasn't scored a goal or got an assist just yet. But I will say he's not entirely useless compared to what some people think. I think for the striker market itself, he is still one of the better ones, because it's just hard to buy good players in that market. And he still works really hard off the ball. He's very good in duels. He gets into a lot, and he still creates chances. I mean, even in the Southampton game, he ended up creating 3 chances. And in the Bolton game, he created 2 chances as well. The issue is as well, I think Arsenal have moved into a system this year where we are crossing the ball a lot. Now, we did do a lot of crosses towards the end of last year and across the middle of the season, because obviously Saka is so good at them in-swinging and out-swinging on crosses. But even this year, it's been quite clear from corners, from crossing in general, there's been a very big part of our game. Now, Jesus has scored from these headers before, but I do think he isn't very good in the air compared to obviously a lot of players. He is very small. He does have a really good leap for his only 5'9" height, but he's not going to be able to match up really well against players in the box all the time. I think these are all factors that really push him away from the squad, and you might see him come in for these games like Southampton at home, or maybe like Ipswich games, but when we play the big teams in the league, I just don't think he can be trusted. And I do think Gabriel Jesus is in a bad situation, and sometimes it's not even his fault. There was a lot of talk about him looking different in pre-season. Even I mentioned it in some videos, and then he got injured straight away to start the season, and he's come back and doesn't look great at all. He's also compared to Havertz, who at the moment, you can't lie, is brilliant, and when he plays up front, it's a completely different level to Jesus. His timings are much better. He's much more of an impact on the game and has a lot more control on the ball. When we're having Jesus in the game now, having about 20 touches, and a lot of them are from deep because he has to pull away, that's not really the best use of his powers. And when he can get into the box and get into them good areas, he's not actually scoring his chances. It's ultimately making him very useless. So we're not getting the good out of him, and we're still getting the bad like before. Overall, Jesus is definitely another confidence player, so I'm sure if he scored 1 goal, then maybe he could get into some form. But we've seen it before. He scored against Forest, then got injured and was basically non-existent. He scored against United at the start of last season, and it was the exact same. And I don't agree with putting Arsenal players down at all. Of course, we want to support them, but I do think it is very valid to go out and say that there's some criticism of Jesus' performances this season, and to expect better, because I do think there's been rumours about him potentially going back to Brazil in January for a bit of money. But even next summer, it's quite clear that Arsenal want to get someone like Benjamin Sesko in. We wanted to get him in this year, which I do think make Jesus pretty sellable within the team. He's compared to Havertz, who's doing a much better job than him. He can't really get into the team unless we actually rest Havertz, or we put Havertz in midfield because some injuries in other places such as Odegaard. And until he performs better when he comes into these games, I don't think he's going to get many starts for the coming months. But if he can stay fit and stay consistent at least, then you can start to look at some of these performances. And if he starts playing well against teams like Preston or maybe Shakhtar in the Champions League, which I think he'll probably play in, then you can start pushing your way into the squad later. But right now, he shouldn't expect to start any games. Overall, let me know in the comments what you think about Gabriel Jesus. I'm sorry about this video. It's a bit negative, but I still feel like it was a very worthy topic of speaking about. And I think Gabriel Jesus is someone that has the potential to do so much more for our team. And I do feel like his time is really dwindling. So if he can't pick it up within the next few months, or maybe until the rest of the season, then you really could see a leave for the guy that really did change the club in 22-23, which I will not obviously forget about. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to watch my video the other day when I talk about Saka's injury, which looks to be pretty decent right now, watch that, and I'll see you in the next one.